Hey guys, let's talk about the biggest negative of marijuana. So, in my opinion, the biggest negative of marijuana doesn't really have to do with marijuana so much itself as much as how people use it. So, a lot of people, okay, let me just give an example. So, let's say someone's sitting at home, it's about 4 p.m., they don't really have anything to do, they're just lying on the couch doing nothing and they're really bored, right? So, maybe they take marijuana and suddenly what's boring has now become interesting. Maybe looking at the walls and looking at the ceiling, normally when they look at the walls and the ceiling, they'd be like, oh, well, those are just walls and a ceiling. But because they're in an altered state of consciousness after they've taken the marijuana, they suddenly find the walls and the ceiling interesting. And instead of staring at them for 2 seconds, they maybe stare at them for 20 minutes and they find it really interesting. Because one of the things that marijuana does is it kind of alters how you perceive things and how you see the world and hear the world. So when someone takes marijuana, they're going to see things differently, and they might find things that are normally unexciting exciting. So the reason that this is kind of an issue is because a lot of people are going to use marijuana as kind of a band-aid for boredom, and boredom is actually really productive. When we think of boredom, we think of it as kind of a negative, but evolutionarily it's actually very productive, because when you have a feeling of boredom, the feeling is kind of painful and uncomfortable, and therefore it's going to get you to do productive things, right? You're going to have the pang of boredom, and then you're going to go out and do something productive, hopefully, because you're not going to want to stay bored because that's a painful and uncomfortable state. So, and this is true evolutionarily, because evolutionarily when people are bored, it's kind of their body's way of telling them to go out and do activities that lead to positive evolutionary activities like reproduction or food, right? So when someone kind of uses marijuana as a band-aid for boredom, what they're really doing is they're kind of stopping themselves from ever being bored and taking away that motivation to be productive and do productive things. So maybe if someone wasn't taking marijuana when they were bored, they would say, you know what, I have to get up and do something productive, and then they would be motivated to do something productive. But because they take marijuana every time they're bored, they're never going to feel that pang of boredom, and they're never going to have that motivation to do productive things. And that's my biggest negative of marijuana. That's not to say there aren't positives, that's not to say it's bad overall, but that's the biggest negative, in my opinion at least.